너무 아리가또. 너무 아리가또.
Hey y'all, just finished editing a video for Fitness and Faith. We got that boy B over there. B, shake it.
If you like the AI generations here, then you're in for a surprise.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
All right, y'all, today we're going to be doing a Bible study. Shout out my boy Studi. Those of you who don't know.
Be back in Jacksonville.
Shout out my boy Studi. For those of you that don't know Studi, he's a thug. He's straight thug.
He's a guy we know.
Yeah, if you don't know Studi, then you don't know.
This is a book, I don't think I've ever read this book at all.
Studi with Studi.
This is cool.
Old Testament.
Old T.
Old Tesh.
It's a fairly short book. It's only got 4 chapters.
Leviticus 10:9.
Ruth 1:16.
Ruth.
1 verse 16 says, "But Ruth said, 'Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you, for where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more. Also, if anything but death parts me from you.' And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more." I've never read the book of Ruth, but I know of Ruth and Boaz, and I know that Ruth was like a very devout woman, like very I wouldn't call her Christian because it wasn't a thing yet, but she was a really like devout woman of God, and I know like she waited for Boaz, who was like, I'm pretty sure he was wrongly like convicted of like a crime, and he was in jail for like 7 years, and she like waited for him the whole time. But I know it says here in my notes, it says for verse 16, it says, "Your people shall be my people, and your God my God." Ruth understood that her decision would mean accepting Naomi's God, since gods and territories went together. I think this is like where Ruth becomes like a true follower of God and doesn't serve like these other gods that like they would serve back then. It says she is, so yeah, Ruth is actually important. It says she married Boaz, and they had a son, Obed, who became the grandfather of King David, which is the line of genealogy that Jesus Christ comes from. So she was part of Jesus' like family, like a bunch of generations back. And it says, this means that Ruth was included in the lineage of Jesus Christ. Ruth's expression of love for her mother-in-law has set a high standard for godly relationships down through the ages. That's what that is. It's basically, what I understand is it's saying like you should be with people, like the person that you're with as far as like dating and friends and marriage and all that stuff. You should always follow and like try to have relationships with people that are like-minded to you, to like Christ, to like you know, like when you're dating someone or you're married, like the Bible says, like even though you have kids and all this stuff, you shouldn't love your wife or your kids or anything more than you love God. Like God should always be the number one thing you love. Ruth here was showing that she's going to be a like-minded person to the people she's talking to. And it just shows like a high standard for godly relationships from now and like from then to like now. Definitely strive to make sure like the person you're with or the person you're following has the same ideals as you, has the same following as you, or like at least that they're striving for it. You know, you shouldn't date a girl that's like doesn't care about God, or a guy that doesn't care about God if you're a female watching. You should definitely always look for people who are Christ-minded and Christ-like to the best of their ability to have relationships with. Not saying you can't reach out to other people who aren't in Christ, because you are supposed to do that. But when it comes to like a personal relationship, someone that you interact with every day, you know, someone you possibly might live with or like have a deep relationship with, they should also be thinking the same way you are thinking. Like you can have your own individual thoughts, I feel like as far as like little stuff in your life, but the important things of your life, like who you worship, who you follow, people in your life should also reflect that, I feel like, is what it's saying.
Yeah, I think that's pretty real. But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay." Who's Ruth talking to?
Naomi.
Who's that?
Naomi, I don't know exactly who that is. We'd have to read the whole book.
In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married a Moabite woman, one named Orpah, and the other Ruth. Okay, well there we go, that's Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem. Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them. She and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons? Am I going to have any sons who could become your husbands?"
You know, it's like, am I going to have any more sons? Who could be your
Am I going to have any more sons who could be your husbands? "Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging. So the 2 women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the woman exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me, and the Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth, the Moabite daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. So
So
Ruth was rejected.
Naomi, I don't think Ruth was rejected. I was saying it seemed like so Naomi is Ruth's mother-in-law, and then Ruth had married one of Naomi's sons, and one of the other women married her other son, and then her sons died. So then Ruth's husband died, or Naomi's husband died, and then Ruth's husband and her sister's husband both died. So they're all three widows, and they heard news that God had helped his people and that there's food. They were going to where they were to get food. Basically, Ruth and the other sister-in-law were from a place where they worshipped like other gods and whatnot. And Naomi's telling her, go back to your gods. And Ruth's like basically choosing to be with Naomi, to stay with Naomi, and to follow her God over going back to like those other gods, whoever it is that they thought were gods that they worship. So she's choosing a better path. She's choosing to be around people of God and not people who worship like other things other than God. That's what it seems like. Even though Naomi said right now God's not dealing favorably with me. Right now he's kind of brought calamity upon me. And Ruth is like, I'm still gonna go with you. I'm gonna read all this eventually. It's only 4 chapters. I mean, a lot of the books are like that. Like a lot of these Old Testament books aren't actually that long. Days when judges ruled. A famine was sometimes a divine punishment, compare Leviticus 26:3-4, but could also advance God's purposes as it did for Israel in Joseph's time. Bethlehem, which means house of bread, was in a fertile region. To sojourn, to be a resident alien. So people would like basically travel there, even though they're not from there. And Moab was a country across the Dead Sea from Judah and one of Israel's enemies. This verse 1-2 lists the clans Euphrates, city Bethlehem, and tribal territory Judah, the family, Moabite wives. While Israelites were strictly forbidden to marry Canaanites, there was no specific prohibition against their marrying Moabites. However, all intermarriage was discouraged because of the commitment of other nations to other gods. Elimelech had no living brothers. A childless widow such as Naomi would have faced an uncertain future, including the lack of financial support. Naomi returns to Bethlehem with Ruth. This first scene relates Ruth's kindness in returning with Naomi to Bethlehem. So I guess Naomi sounds like she was originally from there, and she left Bethlehem and lived somewhere that they were enemies of. Like Moab was an enemy of Israel, and she left God's land to go live over there and marry one of them. Had those kids. They both died. All 3 of them died, the son and the dad. And then eventually it leads Ruth back to Bethlehem. Like you're somewhere you're not supposed to be. Sometimes God does that. So that's kind of making sense now. So she was somewhere she wasn't supposed to be, where they worshipped other gods, and she thought she had it all. She had her husband, her kids were married, and then boom, husband dies, sons die. Now it's just her and the daughter-in-law. And back in this time, if you didn't have like a head of your household, like how are you gonna like make money? How are you gonna live without the head of your household to provide for you, to support you and the kids? And then it shows that like the one sister-in-law returned, or daughter-in-law returned, but Naomi told Ruth to do the same, and Ruth said no. Wherever you go, I go. Whoever your God is, that'd be my God, and wherever you die, I'll die. So she's like showing like real commitment to someone who is not like her. Someone who's supposed to be living a certain way. So boom, they go back to Bethlehem, and then boom, Ruth meets Boaz, and Boaz ended up being her wife, and that's like a whole nother story, like about like marriage and stuff, Ruth and Boaz, which we could get into later. It says, the Lord had visited, God had sent rain to Bethlehem. Now in the springtime there would be food. It said the repeated mentions of daughters-in-law and my daughters show Naomi's love for them. Return each of you to her mother's house. Naomi hopes that both Ruth and Orpah will remarry and have children, find rest in the house of her husband. She hopes they will find security and stability in raising a family. And says, sons in my womb, your husbands. Naomi's question assumes that the widows could marry their dead husband's brothers, levirate marriage, even if it had been possible for Naomi to have another son. However, he would not be able to give Orpah or Ruth a child for many years. This is not a solution to their problem. The hand of the Lord against me. Naomi wrongly thinks her hard circumstances come from God's anger toward her. her. Ruth clung to Naomi, an expression of loyalty and devotion. Orpha's returning to her people meant returning to her God in 1:15. 1:16, your people shall be my people. And
so what is Ruth's role in all of this? Like, why they got a book about her?
I think the biggest thing that you ask about with Ruth is always like Ruth and Boaz. It's her deal is showing that like loyalty and showing like a commitment to choose someone that is right for her. In my opinion, that's like the big. It says the profile of Ruth. Naomi, along with her husband and 2 sons, moved to Israel to Moab to seek relief from a famine. In Moab, one of her sons married Ruth, a Moabite. When Naomi's husband and sons died, she decided to return to her home in Bethlehem. Naomi urged Ruth to stay behind in her native land, but out of love for her mother-in-law, Ruth chose to return with her to Bethlehem and to serve the Lord. Following her mother-in-law's daring plan, Ruth took courageous steps to provide a new family for herself and Naomi. She married Boaz, and they had a son, Obed, who became the grandfather of King David. This means Ruth was included in the lineage of Jesus. That's why she's got a book, because she had a part in bringing forth the lineage of Christ. Without Ruth, there would have been no Obed, and then Obed would never had his son to have, which Obed's son was Jesse. Yep, and then I think that was King David's father was Jesse, and then David obviously is like the line that Christ comes from. It is important that she have her book, but this I know they use Ruth and Boaz a lot for like marriage and stuff. It shows like how you're supposed to like care for someone that you really love, and like if you really love someone, that you'll wait for whatever time Christ deems is necessary. You know, she waited. I think he was locked up for 7 years.
Boaz. She waited for him,
and she waited for him, and I think they're married. Well, obviously it was fruitful because they helped bring upon the descent, like the legacy of Christ. Not the legacy, but like the descendants of Christ.
Ruth said, "My man locked up."
Pretty much. And I think he was locked up like wrongly.
Yeah.
I think that was a big thing. I think he was like wrongly imprisoned.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty insightful. I never knew about Ruth. I don't know about Boaz, but we'll figure about Boaz.
Well, the thing is, it's only Ruth is only 4 chapters.
Yeah,
it's super short. It's like 3 pages.
I was wondering why they got a book about Ruth, but if it's if she's like
I knew she was important, but I never knew she was a part of bringing about the genealogy of Christ. I didn't know that. I didn't know she was a part of Christ's family.
Really?
I just learned that today.
That's what that is. She's part of Christ's family.
I mean, yeah, she brought upon generation like Obed, who is the grandfather of David. David, so many generations before Christ. That's like the lineage that he comes from. That Christ comes from the line of David.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
They always say that like if you I've been reading in the New Testament a lot, like the Gospels, and I just finished Matthew, but I don't know if I'll find one right off the top of my dome. But there is like when they like basically like argue with Jesus about who he is and all that stuff, they always ask him like, "Are you the son of David, the son of man?" And he always is like, "Yeah, that's me, buddy." And then they get really mad when he says stuff like that.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster, feeding the poor and helping out with their bills. Although I was born in Jamaica, now I'm in the US making deals. Damn, it feels good to be a gangster, I mean one that you don't really know. Riding around town in a drop-top Benz, hitting switches in my black 6'4". Now gangster ass niggas come in all shapes and colors. Some got killed in the past, but this gangster here was a smart one. Started living for the Lord and I last. Now all I gotta say to you, wanna be, gonna be pussy and cocksucking pranksters. When the shit jumps off, what the fuck you gonna do? Damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
It feels good to be a gangster. A real gangster ass nigga knows the play. The real gangster ass niggas get the flies of the bitches. Ask that gangster ass nigga little shake. The bitches look at gangster ass niggas like a stop sign and play the role of Little Miss Sweet. But catch the bitch all alone, get the digits, take her out and end up hitting her ass with the meat. Cause gangster ass niggas be the game players, and everything's quiet in the clique. A A gangsta ass nigga pulls the trigger and his partners in the posse ain't telling off shit. Real gangsta ass niggas don't talk much. All you hear is the black from the gun blast. And real gangsta ass niggas don't run for shit. Cause real gangsta ass niggas can't run fast. Now when you in the free world talking shit, you the shit. Hit the pen and let a motherfucker shank you. But niggas like myself kick back and peep game. Cause damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
And now, a word from the president.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. Getting voted into the White House. Everything looking good to the people of the world, but the Murphy family is my boss. So every now and then I hold a favor here and there, like letting a big drug shipment through and send them to the poor community, so we can bust you know who. So voters of the world, keep supporting me, and I promise to take you very far. Other leaders better not upset me, or I'll send 1,000,000 troops to die at war. To all you Republicans that helped me to win, I sincerely like to thank you, cause now I got the world swinging from my